Brewing Inc. is now syndicated on SeriousWriter.com. See them at SeriousWriter.com for resources, articles, videos, topical classes, and now a podcast, the Brewing Inc. Podcast, because we're syndicated on SeriousWriter.com.
Welcome back, faithful listeners, to another episode of the Brew and Ink podcast. This is Interbrews. Number 15?
14.
14.
Right.
We'll
get it right on the title.
Yes. What did we title? We titled 212s? Is that what? Mm-hmm. Well, 212 is a very prophetic number in the Bible a lot.
Right, yeah.
So it was intentional.
We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen now.
But we hope you enjoyed the last Interbrew.
Some people did. Some people have been talking to me about It's opened up conversations with people as they go see Endgame. They come to me, and we talk about it more, and they tell me I'm wrong. A lot of people like to tell me I'm wrong.
Yes.
Pretty much the story
and I think a lot
life.
of people were looking for that stream, that avenue where it was okay to say whatever they wanted about.
Oh, yeah.
Without worrying about spoilers.
Sure,
I think people have been holding back. They need that safe space where they can just say, Captain America wields the hammer of. Oh wait, no, this is not that episode.
That's a different one. Yeah,
different episode. Go if you want to hear the spoilers. Go back to the Avengers episode.
That's right. This is going to be on Game of Thrones. By the way, total tangent, not total tangent, but a tangent. Have you seen the video where the guitar players play the Game of Thrones theme?
I have not.
It's like all these amazing guitar players.
Oh, nice.
A lot of amazing guitar players.
Yes.
That if you're into rock and into that kind of stuff, these are virtuoso guitar players.
Nice.
And so they kind of work it out. It's like the guy from Anthrax and the guy from Rage Against the Machine and all these guys. I recognize these guys.
Yeah.
And it's one of the producers of the show, of Game of Thrones. He's like this amazing guitar player.
He's also playing guitar. Nice.
And it's got Brad Paisley, who is an amazing guitar player. He's in the country music, but he's an amazing guitar player. And so they are working out parts, and then they start playing, and then they just jam.
Dang.
It is an amazing video.
I got to check that out.
Just a little plug for that video.
Because let's start off right now with the incendiary statement.
Yes.
The intro song was the most consistent and best part of the storyline in the end.
Yeah. Hot take. The Game of Thrones theme song might have been the best part about the whole show consistently at least for the last couple seasons.
Yes.
Hot take, right? So, a little background for me. I've been into fantasy and writing fantasy for a while now. And I've been into fantasy since I was a kid. And
Britt, your life is a fantasy.
Yeah.
I didn't want to burst your bubble, but yeah.
And so, I have friends who read and and all kinds of reading.
Friends read. We've been meeting more friends that read all kinds of things too through social media.
That's true.
Some of these people, you're like, oh, so that's what you do with your time.
And what they write.
Yeah.
But all that to say is, someone came up to me years ago, before the show, and was like, have you heard of Game of Thrones? And I said, I've never heard of this.
You're like, is that like musical chairs?
Yeah, no. In fact, he may have said Song of Ice and Fire. He may have just said the series. Have you read Martin? And I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about. And he starts telling me about it. He's like, well, they just kill everybody. He's just like, it's the most depressing book, but you got to read it,
Yeah.
And so I started getting them from the library. I started checking them out, and I got hooked. It was such a different style of writing. And we'll get into why some of that is, I think, here in a few minutes, because there's been some interesting articles on why Game of Thrones has struck such a chord, and why people have gotten so angry at it later on, right?
Yes.
At the show.
For the TV series.
But I read, I just blew through those first 3 books it was just like they were going out of style. And I just couldn't, such a great, unique take on the fantasy genre, you know. And for those of you who don't know, if you just watched the show and you're checking out this episode because you just watched the show, George R. Martin has started a whole genre of fantasy. Like there's a whole kind of subgenre of fantasy now called grimdark that kind of existed before, but it's that whole amoral, everyone's kind of a bad person,
Right.
everyone's out for themselves. Like there's not really that sort of heroic fantasy thing.
Right.
It's all, no, there's really no heroes. It's just people having to deal with life in these fantasy worlds.
Yeah.
And so you still get kind of likable characters, but you know, Martin was the first to take the most likable characters and just start killing them all.
Right. Like, oh, you like this guy? Yeah. He's not in the story anymore.
Boom, he's gone.
He's dead.
Well, and we should have all, if you were watching the show even, you should have known Sean Bean was going to die.
Right.
Because he dies in everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the character he plays.
That's who
He's
he
been
is.
typecast.
If you haven't
Sorry.
seen that movie, if you haven't seen that video of how many times Sean Bean has died in a movie,
Yeah.
you should watch that video. That's an amazing video.
It's hilarious. I can think of 3 right off the top of my
Right?
head. Right?
So then when I heard that the show, HBO was making a show, I was like, obviously it's got to be HBO because they would have to cut out half of the scenes from the book.
Right.
If it was on regular TV.
Right.
Or it'd be rated R or X if it was on movie. I guess you could do movies, right? But obviously, you know, those of us who were reading the books, and it was kind of a smaller group at that point.
Oh, for sure.
And then the show came out, and it surprised everyone how good it was and how great this people fell in love with the show. They just really got involved with the show. And so seasons and seasons, and they took their time, and it was character-based, and it was just really great. Yeah. And so that's kind of my background with it.
Yeah, and
What
I'll
about
jump
you?
in for myself. I had come into a brief contact with it without knowing. Back in college, one of my roommates, she was gifted the first 3 books of the series because she's a very avid, voracious reader. Like, she'll finish a Game of Thrones book in like a day.
Wow.
Like, she'll just get through it. So I remember her having those books and kind of reading them and asking me if I had read them, and I hadn't, and then I didn't know anything about it, you know, for years. And then it wasn't until years later, when the show had already been out, her and I were talking again. She's like, "Oh yeah, you remember when I got those books and I was reading?" I was like, "Oh, that was those books. I got it." Because it was, Song of Ice and Fire and stuff like that. So I've listened to the first 2 audiobooks.
Okay.
And that wasn't until last year. So when Game of Thrones started becoming like the big thing and everyone was anticipating and all that, that's when I knew, okay, I'm gonna have to wait this out. I don't like getting sucked into hype where it's like, you know, these crescendos of hype and then you have to wait and this lull of like I will lose interest. I will, you know, I'll be like, I'm done with it. I'm over it. So I waited until the 7th season was out, and then I started watching last year.
Yeah, okay.
And then at the same time, I was listening to the books, and the books really helped reinforce which characters were which. And then also watching it helped keep the characters in the book straight. And so I got
there are a lot of characters.
Yes,
by the way.
a whole lot of them, and some of them have the same sounding names. But yeah, so I was liking it. I was watching it, and I was watching it at my own pace. I was able to kind of binge when I wanted to, and then take a week or 2 off. And so it came to the season 8 coming out, and I was wrapping up season 7. So then I kind of got to watch season 8. I waited until the last episode was out, and then just would watch them 3 episodes at a time. You know, one day after the other.
Sure.
And so I wasn't really on this long, drawn out, you know, hype train with it because I knew if I was, I would set myself up for disappointment, you know, probably, most likely, in some way or another. And I think I'm glad I did it the way that I did. Because I think that's one of the things that it really had in its favor was the demand on the people that were watching the show wanting more. Like, to the degree where they just took the TV series and said, we're going to continue on. Martin, you haven't finished writing the next book, but we're going to complete it because we've got a demand here that we need to complete. And I think that was really one of the things that worked well for the show was there was such a demand for just the characters and the scenery. Like, everything they did looked great and felt good.
It was like watching a mini movie every week. I mean, for those of us who were watching it as they came out, it was like watching a mini movie every week.
Yeah, especially the last season with hour and a half episodes.
Oh man, the last season, as far as the length.
Yeah,
and it wasn't as it kind of had its soap opera-ish kind of.
Yeah.
Like, there was lots of conversations and lots of, there's lots of character building that they did in those first few seasons.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really soap opera-ish. It wasn't like the same things over and over again, like the same issues.
And it wasn't bad lighting like a soap opera.
Or bad acting. Like, they really did a great job with casting.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, just put it out there, Tyrion was my favorite character. I said from the beginning, if he ever kills off Tyrion, I'm out.
We'll be done. Yep.
I'm out.
I think most people were on that same. But speaking of variations of the theme song, have you heard the Peter Dinklage theme song?
Yes, I have. That's really funny.
I mean, that basically sums up most people' interest in the show. Is they liked Tyrion and they liked, kind of where it was going with that.
Well, he is a great... You know who Tyrion is? Tyrion reminds me of a Stephen King main character.
Right.
Like, he is a Stephen King.
Yes.
He is a fatal flaw.
Yep.
Disadvantaged.
Yep.
Disabled, in a sense. I mean,
right.
like
outcast from the normal society. Yeah.
But with a good heart and put in a situation where he has to make difficult decisions.
Yep.
And so let's kind of get into the last couple seasons. Now, I didn't mind season 7 as much, although we will get into why people didn't like it. All right, okay. But let's go over maybe why we both. I think we talked about it before. Like, we were both a little disappointed with those last few episodes, and really the last season. Yeah. But maybe give a couple things that you were disappointed, or maybe a couple things you liked, or something.
So, I was with them pretty much all along the way. Like, the Red Wedding, great. Great surprise. Killing off the dire wolves as they went. When they did, and then even with the whole setup of Dany coming, Daenerys, slowly making her way across, slowly building a following, and then bringing in people that, as characters, we go, this is a smart dude. This is a guy that's on the right side of decision making. This is a guy that is out there for the betterment of most people, not just to advance himself. And they end up as like the characters underneath her, giving her advice. So the setup was there, and the setup was good. Even with having the Red Lady joining in with Jon, right? Like, because for a little bit there.
Oh, she was weird.
He
was like this evil maybe character.
Yeah, well, they did a great job with making you as a viewer go, no, what she's doing and the things that she's doing, I don't agree with, but it's working. Like, whenever she does these things, they actually get results.
Right.
And so you start going, because the whole debate of like, what gods are the real gods within this realm?
Right.
And so then you start going, well, maybe there's something more there that we don't know yet. So I liked that they had those characters all intertwined. I felt like season 7 started kind of suffering from what I was calling, the Avengers syndrome, where basically you got to a point where you had this large cast of main characters who, at this point, they just weren't going to kill off.
Right.
You kind of knew, like, okay, we've assembled all these main characters that have made it this far, and you're just waiting for someone to die. And then it wasn't really happening.
Right.
And I think that's when it started taking a shift in the other directions because you were so used to expecting Game of Thrones,
right?
Not superheroes or not
superhero
this Hollywood. Yeah.
So that's the first thing I'm going to talk about. I guess we'll just start there. I read a great article where the guy was talking about the change in writing. Now, a lot of people have commented on the writing has changed.
Uh-huh.
The writing changed. And here's why the writing started to change. There's a lot of reasons for that. One of them is they just stopped using. There was no more source material to use.
Right.
So they stopped. There was no more source material for them to go back to, even though they changed things up and they did what
right.
Hollywood does. But they just stopped using the source material. All they had was his ideas, right? So one of the ways that the writing changed, and this is a great article, was he said it went from a sociological writing to a psychological basis of writing.
Much more Hollywood.
Which was Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
So sociological is this idea that there are systems in place, and these systems, governments or religions or all this stuff, and they just eat people and spit them out.
Right.
They just kind of consume
it's the
people.
system that needs to be overcome.
Yeah.
That you have to, war against.
Yeah, it's really the system that's kind of causing all of these problems.
Yeah.
So when you had, like the very first scene is Ned Stark beheading someone, right? I mean, like
one of his own.
Yeah.
Like
the system, we gotta uphold this thing.
Yep.
Like, and even though he's more noble, Cersei and those guys, like it ends up,
and it's in the title itself, Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Like
right.
they're not talking about the will of the king or something. Like they're talking about the system and the things that it does to the people
and
within
the effects of power, that power has over people, which is to abuse and oppress
and take advantage
take advantage of people. Now that's just you can politically agree or disagree with that, but that's where Martin was coming from. So when Martin's writing these stories, and the reason why that's why it worked in those first few seasons and those first few books, because he can kill off main characters,
right?
Because the story really isn't about that character,
right?
Although he's got great characters and it's very, he fleshes them out really well. The story is really about the systems.
Yeah.
So people are in any system. That's kind of the idea behind the sociological systems kind of basic approach, is that people are not important.
Right.
And Tyrion has this conversation with Cersei through those first few seasons several times. You don't even care about people. You just want what you want. You care about your children or whatever.
Right.
But you just want one of them to be king, like, or whatever. Again, going back to Game of Thrones. So when Hollywood took over the writing of the episodes, they started writing it like Hollywood writes. Hollywood writes from a psychological, individualistic point of view, which is this character must overcome this other character. Like and then they get way more people, pitting people against each other. They get way more like the fight between the Hound and Brienne, and they get all this stuff, right? They get this more of this conflict between individuals, which works great in film, which is great for superheroes, right? It just where it's more individualistic. And so, but people they don't know that's what's happening.
Yeah.
But people started to realize this is different. They're not killing off Arya in the 7th season, right?
Right.
Like they're all surviving.
Yeah. And in the end, honestly, Arya and Tyrion were the two that I was like, I want to see them make it to the end, but at the same time, you're watching Game of Thrones, so you have to expect it. And I think that's where they gave us, the what to expect from them. And then they I don't know if they were trying to be tricky or they wanted to, be like, oh, we got you. Like, we had you expect this, and now we didn't deliver. And the key word there is that they didn't deliver what they had already set up.
Well, they didn't deliver because, for two reasons, they they wrote from a different perspective, like I said. Yeah. That wasn't the only difference. But I think they were just given, again, without the source material, I think Martin just told them what happened at the end.
Right.
I think he said, well, they're all going to get to Winterfell. They're going to fight the thing. You know, the night guy. This is what, I think he just gave him boom, 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 boom.
Right.
These are the beats of the story I was going to get to.
Yeah.
But here's another thing. Martin is a pantser.
Right.
No TV show writing. Yeah. None of them are pantsers.
What's the other term for pantser?
Like a discovery writer.
Discovery writer.
Yeah. Like they set up the scene, they set up the story, they set up the characters, and then they just let the characters make decisions as they go.
Yeah.
And that's why Martin's original 3-book trilogy has now 5, and he doesn't even know how long it's going to be. Like he thinks it's going to be 6 or 7, maybe.
Because the characters really do take over the story, and as he gets into the scene, he sees what's going to happen, and yes, he's got the beats up ahead, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to take this surreptitious way to get there.
Yeah, and so that's the other thing that changed.
Yeah.
So now Hollywood or HBO is in charge. They're trying to make an outline and force the story to the end that Martin gave them.
Yeah.
So that's why people were so mad at that scene with Dany. They were like, you didn't bring her character there. Everything that had happened for the last 6 seasons.
Right.
It all made sense for that character, right?
Yeah.
You're saying even the red woman, and she's like, looks like evil and disturbing, but you kind of understand it, right?
Right.
Like, the way he wrote it and the way it kind of comes across is, well, it works, right? I mean, like, the way he wrote it was because it was a discovery writing kind of thing and a character-based making decisions and staying consistent with that. Then when people did come to the end, that's why the Red Wedding was such an amazing scene. It pissed everybody off.
Right.
But no one was ready to quit the show.
No.
It totally made sense.
Right.
In the world that he had built, in the characters that he had set up, and all these people, it totally made sense.
Right. And I think that's what didn't work as well, was that they had these characters, and as a viewer, you really did almost intimately know these characters. And you've seen how they've grown, you've seen what they've gone through, and so you've seen some of the setups, so there's expectations there. But then when you get into the 7th season, towards the end, and then definitely in the 8th season, all of a sudden, these characters aren't acting in the way that has been set up.
Nope.
They're acting in a way that makes you go, oh, okay, they're trying to take this in a direction.
Right.
You can see it as a viewer going, they've got to wrap this up.
They're just wrapping this up.
Yeah, they're out of time. They only have so many episodes. Maybe Arya killing off the I want to call him the Lich King because that's
Night King, right?
The Night King. Wasn't the best, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But I was still like, okay, I see where they're going. They want to do this whole thing with Cersei and Dany, but then in the end, it was just like, none of these characters are doing what would be in line with their arc. Like Jaime Lannister, for example, has this great arc of overcoming who he has been, who he's been labeled as, and kind of what he values. Like he's at this point now where, he's got Brienne, the knight, and like they've fallen in love or whatever. He's starting to become more like Tyrion almost in a way where, like, yes, he still loves his family, but maybe not everything his family does is the best for everyone else. And but then all of a sudden, like, he just throws it all out the window and reverts back to who he was in season 1. And you're like, why didn't you just kill him off 4 seasons ago if all you're going to do is have him end up right back where he, like, okay, yeah, there's a little bit of, like, that romance there, like, oh, yay, love.
Yeah.
He really loves his sister and family, and he's willing to die for it. But it just suffered from not remembering who these characters were. Like, Arya had such a huge buildup, all this training. I think she was the one that we saw the most in development and training, and had one of the most unique powers. So she uses it to get back, revenge, and that, where she pretends to be the guy and uses that to kill off all his family. But she never uses it again in that
She
final...
just becomes a cool warrior.
Yeah.
She doesn't become an assassin.
Right.
She just becomes this cool warrior all of a sudden.
She kills off the Night King, and then she's basically done.
And then she's basically done. Well, I told you already. I don't think they knew what to do with her after that.
Right,
exactly. I think Martin told them she kills... this is total assumption on my part. But this is what I think happened. I think Martin told them, this is what Arya does.
Yeah.
This was the whole build-up. This is where I'm taking her.
Yeah.
And then they didn't know what to do with her.
Yeah.
So she just kind of hangs around.
I'm okay with...
And then survives this
massive war scene. Just to then sit down in a council and talk.
Right.
Like, that's all she did after that.
And look at Tyrion like, really? What are you going to do about this? Or whatever. It was just weird.
And I'm okay. I was okay with Arya killing off the Night King. Like, I saw the setup, and I was like, okay, I like the setup. I like where it's going.
It was good.
But what we lacked, we got it kind of. The Night King had a little showdown kind of with Theon Greyjoy, but really the setup had been to have a showdown between the Night King and Jon Snow. Yeah. Because Jon Snow had already fought them twice and barely survived, and the expectation was there to have something bigger than that. And, for me, and this is personally, I was expecting the Night King and all his generals to not be all linked to one person.
Right.
So that you took one out and then they all disappear. Like, I was looking for that... a little bit more depth in the storytelling where, they fight a couple of the lieutenants or whatever, these bigger guys, and they take out portions of the army, little victories in the battle, but it just went from like, oh no, we're all about to die, to you take out one guy and then everything...
Yeah,
it's fine.
Well, and part of that is one of many people's criticisms is that they could have had 4 more episodes in the last 2 seasons. Like they were given the budget for 10 episodes in these 2 seasons.
Yeah,
and, they had spent all this time. Winter is coming, and spent all this time setting up the dead coming, and we got to prepare for this And it was like half that episode. It wasn't even like the full episode.
Yeah.
They were just like, all right, I guess they're coming in the morning. Like, maybe we'll die. And,
right.
And, and some of that character stuff was okay, but it was just, I agree. Like, there could have been a lot more back and forth. There could have been a lot more movement. There could have been a lot more, let's take out a lieutenant. Let's take out some of his kind of secondary guys. And I think you brought it up the other night when we were talking about it. They never use Bran's powers.
Ever.
And I'm like, they keep setting up Bran is this powerful, can take over
people,
animals and people, and he never does anything.
He just rode around in ravens the whole time.
Sat there.
Yeah.
And talked like, what was the guy's name? It was kind of like the Indian guy in Mystery Man.
Yes.
He just kind of kept saying these weird statements to people.
Right.
And it was just so bad. It was really so bad.
Like, they had done so much. He was the other one that had a really good character arc set up. Like, they spent time on showing where this power came from and who it was with originally. He got some training from that guy, and now he's the guy with the power. And the whole setup with Hodor and all that, and showed how powerful it was. His power was so powerful that it affected someone in the past,
right,
when he was controlling their mind,
right,
and then it gets to this big scene of fighting
the Night King,
the Night King,
and he does nothing.
Like, so I watched the video on how it should have ended.
Oh yeah, did you?
And there was 2 things they said that I would agree with. One was they should have lost that battle at Winterfell.
and had to
and then had to retreat
Yes.
and basically convince Cersei, who is holed up in her tower, that it's like we've got to join together. Like we didn't succeed on our own.
Yeah.
Like this is the last stand.
And here's why that would have been good.
Yeah.
Because it would have almost forced Dany
Right.
to do something like she did.
Right. It would have
Like it would almost forced her to go like, well, if they're not going to listen, I'm taking them all out. And you still could have killed the second, the
Right.
other dragon, killed Missandei,
Right.
whatever her name. You could still killed all these people and put her in this kind of foreshadowing, like, oh, she's about to lose her crap. Like, you could have still done all that, but that would have forced something. Like, like, well, this is for humanity.
Yeah.
And this is a sacrifice I'm willing to make for humanity or whatever.
Right.
But no. I mean, like, again, like, they didn't bring us character-wise to these decisions.
They didn't. And the second thing that they could have done in that battle with Bran specifically was this idea that I heard from this video also was take over, like, Jon Snow's dragon.
Yeah.
Or one of the two dragons that was on their side, take over that one and have the mind control dragon fighting against the undead mind control dragon, because that's like equal forces now. And then he gets the dragon killed, and so that puts a division or an enmity between Dany and trusting, the Stark family outside of Jon Snow. Kind of like, you just hijacked this dragon from me and now he's dead.
So here's why I think they didn't do that. I'm just coming up with this now. Here's why I think they didn't do it.
Yeah.
I think Hollywood was trying to make the point that power corrupts.
Yeah.
With Cersei and with Dany.
Yeah. Right.
That was kind of their moral at the end, which kind of fell flat.
Yeah.
Really. But that's what they were trying to say, I think.
And
because
I think that's why they diminished the fact that Bran and Arya both having these two amazing powers.
Yeah. So they diminished Bran because they wanted to make him king at the end. Mm-hmm. Like, it would have made total sense in a certain way if, like, oh my God, Bran can do all this. Like, let's make him king.
Right.
Like, he's got all these powers, like, but no, they wanted to give it to, like, this weak, like, they wanted to make the point.
Bran the Broken.
Yeah, Bran the Broken.
Bran the Broken.
They wanted to make this point of making the king be someone who didn't want it.
Right.
Which kind of reminded me, by the way, of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
yes.
right? When they kind of made that statement at the end, like, you're the one who doesn't want to be king, that's why you'll make a good one.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I haven't read it, but I watched the movie plenty of times.
Oh, my God. When he says, the president of the universe or whoever it was, and like, he's such an idiot or whatever, it's so funny.
Right.
He's like, the only person who should be president is the one who doesn't want to be.
Understand what it means to be the president. Yeah.
Anyway, it's so
and
funny.
You always have to make sure you have your towel.
Yeah,
yes.
But...
So let's go back to what you were saying, and this is an important point about the moral of, they're trying to say, power corrupts.
And stories are so important.
Right, and stories is what's important, which, side note real quick, we have someone with a giant army going, no, we control everything, and then Tyrion gives a little speech about stories, and all of a sudden we're like, we're gonna vote. We're all voting.
I guess we're voting.
And then the army that controls the city is like, oh, okay, we'll leave then.
We'll leave.
We're bowing out. Yeah,
it was
go ahead, vote. Yeah.
After he just told him, you don't get to talk.
Right.
And then Tyrion gets to just have this big speech.
Yeah.
No, but so Steven's talking about this video. I think it was an NPR guy. And he didn't even like fantasy or Game of Thrones. He was like this kind of like literature guy. He was like a literature professor. And he was saying, and he predicted, this was a couple of years ago I watched this video, or listened to it. It was audio, like from NPR radio. And the guy said, he made the argument that people were going to be disappointed at the end of Game of Thrones. Yeah. Because it's a tragedy. The basic kind of move of the story is a tragedy.
Right.
That the heroes, the good people die, the bad people live. Mm-hmm. And, and just time and time again, we see this tragic...
and it's a cycle of a system.
It's a cycle of the system and all that stuff. he didn't talk as much about the system, but just about that it was a tragedy. But his point was in literature, the only way a tragedy works is if there is a moral at the end. Mm-hmm. Romeo and Juliet, right? The moral at the end is that our divisions cause death, cause destruction,
cause us to lose the ones we love.
To lose the ones we love. If we just weren't so divided, these family fights, and you could apply that moral to a lot of different situations,
right? Which
is why it's so universal and it's endured, because it's not just a great love story.
Right.
It's a tragic love story that would have been fine if there wasn't these families that hated each other in division.
But without a moral.
This guy said, look, Martin is amoral, basically. Mm-hmm. Martin isn't trying to teach a moral.
Right.
He doesn't believe really in any sort of absolute morality.
He's just writing this
this tragedy. And the guy's point at the end was, he said, a tragedy without morals is us just enjoying watching people suffer.
Yeah.
He said, and that's basically porn. That was his point. That's he's just making us enjoy people suffer.
Right.
But he also said this: if they give a moral at the end, it's not going to work. It's
going to fall flat.
It's going to fall flat because that's not what he's been setting up. We've been talking about, he hasn't been setting up a moral that the good guys win. He hasn't been setting that up ever.
No.
And that's why it probably works in his mind that he tells him, well, Danny actually freaks out at the end, is actually evil. That's probably why it works in his mind.
Right.
Because he's saying the good guys don't win. Because even when this person wins, we all lose.
Yeah.
And so that was the guy's point. And this was years ago. It was an NPR guy. I can't remember his name. But it was a great video because he said, it's not going to work as a tragedy.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason why I think it fell flat to people is because they tried to twist it. They tried to turn it into a story. His whole speech about stories was so self-serving.
Right.
For Martin and
for himself and
well, I just mean for Game of Thrones.
In reality.
In reality, stories are so important. They must go on.
Make sure you buy his books when they come out.
It was so weird. And, Tyrion, the last season, maybe the last two seasons, his character was to always be against the system because he was smart.
Yep. He was always
that's
a
not
step
going
ahead.
to work because of this. And you can do that, but you're just but he never got to that point.
So that's where they failed also, was when they started setting him up as this character that has these great ideas and is trying to lead, and then his ideas are failing and he's not succeeding. That was an indication this character is going to die,
Right, yeah.
And then when he's standing there in front of the gates of the sister who would like nothing more than to wipe him off the face of the earth, basically, pretty much. She doesn't do it.
Anything.
I was waiting for the arrow, out of nowhere or whatever, and then they didn't do it. The tension was so thick there, and that would have been a Game of Thrones note. Would have been talked about. It would have been remembered. It would have been that thing to talk about in the season. They didn't do it. But let's talk about I think, to me, the most disappointing thing in the last episode, which was setting up this division between Jon and Dany, and then they didn't do anything with it. So there was this tension there of Jon wrestling with, am I a Stark? The family keeps saying, you'll always be one of us. You're a Stark. But then him knowing the truth of, I'm actually a Targaryen, and I'm actually in love with my aunt, who is also trying to be the main queen, and I'm not trying to take it from her. I keep trying to tell her this. I don't want it. You do it, and I'll just be your humble servant. But then she goes crazy. Again, another thing that kind of all of a sudden changed the direction of where her character was going.
Yeah, well, I
think it worked more than some of the other things, but
it worked.
Yeah,
a little bit. And what a lot of people said is they didn't mind that she did what she did, or even the extreme turn. The problem again goes back to they set it up, but they didn't lead her character there.
Right.
They didn't give us time with her character where we believed, okay. Like, we just basically had to go, oh, well, she's a Targaryen at heart, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know what I mean? They set it up, well, we're going to flip a coin.
Yep.
Maybe she'll be crazy, maybe she won't. Like, I mean, they didn't lead us to a character.
And so I was watching that last episode going, there's only 45 minutes left. How are they going to have this big showdown between Jon and Dany? Like, it's got to happen, right? That's what this whole lead-up has been about. And then it doesn't happen. They turn Jon Snow into Jaime Lannister.
Yep.
He was the Queen Slayer. And then they banished him back to season 2, where he goes to the Wall. And he goes north and becomes the new Mance Raider. You know, the guy that's going to take over up there. So disappointment there on Jon's end. And I get it. Like, oh, okay, he's going back to the one thing that he was really great at, like leading people at the Wall. But what really I feel like was the most disappointing was just the way that she dies off. That he stabs her, and then she just kind of bleeds out of the mouth and the nose. Doesn't even really say anything. There's no like, oh, you betrayed me. Oh no, and you know, whatever. That would have been disappointing too. What really should have happened was somehow the dragon intervenes. You know, burns her with the fire, and it heals her. Something supernatural on her part that then goes, she now knows his hand. Now we have 2 real Targaryens who have both died and come back to life, and now they're against each other because they've both shown their hand. She's shown that she's willing to kill whoever to get what she wants, and he's shown that he actually will betray his queen if it's in the best interest of the people.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. And I thought we were going to get maybe Arya with all the 2 remaining direwolves and the wolf pack that Nymeria was with going against Dany with her 1 remaining dragon and having the visual representation of what was internally going on with Jon Snow, Stark versus Targaryen on his, fighting on his behalf. And none of that. Like, there was so much that they could have used that they had set up for.
I totally agree. And I totally agree. I think that what they did with Bran didn't work for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, I love the arc for Sansa. Mm-hmm. I loved her arc. Yeah. I mean, the fact that she was kind of this weak, annoying person in the beginning. Yeah. And now she's a strong, kind of bad A person.
Yeah.
Like, she's like intense.
Yep.
And so it totally makes sense. She's going to take over Winterfell. I was awesome. And I like what they overall did with Arya up until she killed the Night King. Mm-hmm. Other than they really didn't explore as much of the assassin, what kind of thing that I think they should have.
Well, they went the route of, oh, she's falling in love with Gendry now, because they didn't know what to do with Gendry.
Yeah, they didn't know what
obviously, because they set him up as this, oh, he's a secret, bastard child of who was the true king before the Starks tried to start taking over again.
Here's what they were doing in the last episode. Okay, who hasn't had sex?
Right. Yeah.
That's basically what
Let's
the writers
get them out there.
said.
Yeah.
Well, Bran hasn't had sex.
Yeah.
We haven't seen her take off her clothes yet. Yeah. I mean, like, it was just so telegraphed. Well, Arya hasn't. Oh, and it'll be a little shocking because when we started, she was 10.
Right.
Or whatever, But I think with Arya, she always all of a sudden becomes Christopher Columbus. Like, all of a sudden she's like, oh, I'm just going to get on a ship.
Right.
Like, I mean, like I said, they didn't know what to do with her.
Right.
And with Jon, there was no character development in his choices. He didn't make any more choices.
No. Yeah,
he was just sent and he did what he was told. That's not Jon's character.
No.
Jon's character was not, I'm just going to do what I'm told.
Right.
Jon's character, although he kind of did here and there, but it was about, I'm going to do what I believe is right. And I think they just should have killed him off somehow. I mean, that would have been the tragic
That's what I thought was going to happen.
Or something.
Yeah.
or at least made him. Maybe they tried to set him up as king, and he just sneaks out and goes to the north.
Right.
I mean, like some active choice on his part that would be tragic, or would make sense for his
I
character.
think the fact that he was so vocal about not wanting to be king and not wanting the throne, but I think to be killed off because of someone's distrust of him wanting to take the throne, I think that would have been Game of Thrones.
That would have been Game of Thrones. And then they would have been like, well, they would have had to have that stupid discussion as far as, or at least a stupid setup for the discussion.
Right.
They could have just been like, well, what do we do now?
Who do we have left?
Like, who do we have left? Like, but yeah, it was badly done. Okay, so let's do some cool stuff.
Okay, cool stuff.
So I love the dragons fighting.
Yes.
Dragon fighting is cool.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's in one of my books.
Right.
It's just cool.
Yep.
I don't care who you are. Dragon fighting is cool. So dragon fighting was
Especially
cool.
when there's someone riding on the back of the dragon, too.
Yeah.
Like when there's some sort of like
intense,
character that's controlling it. Yeah.
And like I said, I like the Sansa arc.
Yeah. I even liked how they started, bringing Sansa and Tyrion back together.
Yes,
I
did.
there.
I like that too. That was great. Like there was a little too much in the last couple seasons of reunited. I mean, there's a little too much of that.
Yeah.
In the last couple seasons of I missed you.
We're back together. Yeah.
Now let's talk serious. Yeah. There's a little bit of that. That was where it got a little too soap opera-ish for me. But I liked some of that. I liked.
The Hound in the Mountain. I thought they did a great job with that.
Oh, the conversation the Hound has with Arya in the Red Keep was amazing. He was like, "You don't want to do this. This is not you. Like you don't want to be
turn
me.
around, go back. Don't be.
You'll be like me. This will just end in death for you."
Yes.
Like that was a great conversation. That was a great moment.
Yeah, Arya and the Hound's arc together.
Yeah,
they did that well.
They did that well. They did a lot of that. Some
Arya
of that stuff
was pretty badass through most of that.
She was.
I would have liked to see more of she spent the time to make Gendry make her this weapon, and you kind of saw it a little bit in the hallway when she was fighting, but it didn't really get showcased.
No, it didn't.
And
she spends a lot of time running. All of a sudden, she's scared. I'm like, I thought she was like supposed to be this amazing warrior. All of a sudden, like I'll take everybody out. I did like that worked for me that she took out the Night King.
Yeah,
I think the battle scenes in season 7 were way better.
Okay.
I think the battle scenes in season 7 were way better. I think there was a lot of inconsistencies that people have pointed out online.
Yeah,
you can find that. But there were a lot of inconsistencies in the.
We're talking about the things that we like now,
right? Yeah, but I like the battle scenes in season 7 a lot. I like some of the battle scenes in 8 a lot. Some of the battle stuff, but
it's hard. You go back to go. I like this, but they didn't do this right.
Yeah,
it's hard to stay positive.
I really did. I do think that if they had taken the time to really explore it. I like the fact that they started killing off these people that were close to her.
Yes.
Like Jorah and then Missandei. Yes. Like the fact
Jorah's death was great.
Oh, that was very well done.
Yeah.
And the fact that he ends up giving up his life for her.
Right.
I mean, that all worked for me.
And having him be healed and by Samuel Tarly in that whole like it elevated both of their characters, brought them, to the forefront again. He was able to return to his queen, and Samuel Tarly was able to showcase that he can be what he was trying to be, by being, what was it called? The guys with the chain.
The Maester.
The Maester, yeah. He was showcasing, like, yes, he can be a Maester.
Yeah.
And that's what he's been wanting to do. That was his whole character arc. And so that was great. Both of those guys had great endings.
It was great. And I liked the moments between Tyrion and his brother.
Yes.
I thought that was great. And I liked the fact that Tyrion kind of held on to that love of his family.
Yes.
Like, even though he knew they were really bad,
Yeah.
like, he still held on to this hope
Right.
that they didn't all have to die.
He was putting himself in direct danger and harm's way to plead with his sister. I don't want to see you dead.
I don't want to see you dead. I know a lot of what you did was for your kids. And because that was consistent from day one. Like, he knew she loved her kids. And so they went back to that. Well, was it the best writing in the world? Some of that, no. But I like some of the interaction he had with his brother. And I like the fact, I mean, when the dragon kind of picks up Danny and just leaves, I kind of liked that. I was like, that was kind of nice. I mean, I wish they had brought her character to a better place.
I wish the dragon had lit Jon Snow up.
Oh, yes.
And then you find out that he's also impervious to that he really is a true Targaryen.
Definitely should have done
Missed
that.
opportunity.
Yeah, I totally thought that's what was going to happen.
Right.
They were setting that up, and I was like, nope, no payoff.
Nothing.
And I think that's, again, there were some good things here and there, and I liked I liked some of it.
I liked what they did with Davos Seaworth.
Yeah.
With the Onion Knight, like he made it through, and he was there. Like, he's another one of those like downtrodden, handicapped type characters that find themselves in this position of power that they're not really trying to, insert themselves into the way that all these other characters are.
Right.
And
he was a great character.
Yeah.
And I overall liked what they did with him. But again, they could have killed off a lot more people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, like, they could have made the end consistently more tragic, like the show had been.
Yeah.
And it would have been, I mean, just at the end of the battle with the Night King, for most, if not all, of the main characters, besides Jorah, I'm trying to think if there's anyone else.
Well,
all of them survive.
Well,
and Theon.
Theon Greyjoy, yeah.
But again,
another good death.
Yeah, but it was a good death. Like, and again, that's so not Game of Thrones. They weren't tragic deaths. They weren't senseless deaths. They weren't. That would have made sense in the story.
Storyline, yeah.
But senseless, that would have made it tragic. They were noble deaths. Oh, they gave their life for something good.
Yeah.
And again,
which is different than the first 6-7 seasons.
But yeah, I liked what they did with Davos. They kept him pretty consistent. And like I said, I just think there were a lot of things, like you said, they didn't deliver. They didn't really take the time
to look at what have we promised. What is going to be an expectation that we need to wrap up?
Thank you. What has been the promise and the tone and the character and the writing from here on out? Let's use what's worked, right?
Yeah.
And just keep going with that. And you could have still had surprises. You could have still done things, but I liked it that Jon killed her.
Yeah.
I mean, but again, it would have been so much more tragic if they had really brought her character to a place where we would have made that decision too.
Right.
Where we believed, I would have done that too.
Right.
Like, as evil as it was or whatever it was, then it would have been a very tragic moment. More than it was. I didn't really feel
No, I didn't either.
Tragedy.
They went for the angle of the tragedy through the fact that she still really loved Jon.
Right.
And he wasn't reciprocating. And that it was supposed to be tragic in that way, like, her heart was for him and she loved him, and then he betrayed her.
He's not kissing her anymore. And he's not going to be with her.
Right.
He's weirded out by the fact that they're related.
I mean, she's his aunt,
and she's like, whatever, man.
Yeah. We're Targaryen.
This is what we do.
Right. Huge miss on that.
So. But I'm really interested. I hope Martin finishes the story.
I think he has a great opportunity, because I was thinking, how is he ever going to get people interested in his books again if they've been satisfied through the TV series? If all they've been watching is the TV series, and the TV series ends on this grand note, like, he can't just rewrite what they did in the show.
Yeah.
And so luckily for him, everyone is pretty much disappointed in what the TV show did.
I don't know that he was that strategic about it. I'm not saying you're saying that either. Right. I don't think he was strategic about it, but I definitely think that you're right, that this has set him up for success.
Yeah.
Because all he has to do is write it.
Just do what he's been doing.
Just do what he's been doing.
The way he's been writing it.
The way he wants to do it. And even if it's average, the fan base is going to flip out and love it.
Yeah.
Because they want something different.
Yep.
And that's what they keep saying. Yep. We want something different. We want something different. And he'll just have to give them whatever he wants.
I think, in the end, you're going to hear what you usually hear from people that read versus people that watch movies. Have you read the books? But have you...
The books are so much better.
Yeah, the books are so much better. And I think it'll be great because then you'll have one way to experience the ending that you want, and then you'll have another way to visually be stimulated and see something that's grand and well done, except for that one episode where they were fighting in the war and it was really dark and you couldn't really see anything. Other than that episode, everything was visually very appealing in the TV show.
No, it was great. And again, they did such a great job you got to give them credit. They did a great job for 6 seasons, maybe 6.5. There was a lot of great stuff in season 7. Some of those battle scenes were amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, not since the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Have you seen amazing big battle scenes like that were just gritty and real and awesome?
Yep.
But there were still those tragedies. That's what I'm saying. Like, even in season 7, there's still those tragedies.
Yeah.
Anyway, they got to give them credit. They did really well for maybe 6.5, 7 seasons. I don't know why they made the choices that they did, but obviously people are disappointed. But I really hope he gets to finish because I think if it had been amazing at the end and people were like, this is the best thing you've ever seen, I don't think he would have ever finished it.
He was like, I don't need to.
I don't think he would have ever finished it.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know how strategic he was about that because he's banking money, man.
Right.
I mean, there's no way this dude is set for life.
He fed them his B-roll story. like, yeah, this is how I think I want it to end. And really in his head, like, that's not really the way.
Yeah. Did you see the video where Martin has sold his soul to the devil?
No.
Have you seen that? So
No.
there's a video where Martin sells his soul to the devil, and the devil comes for payment. He's like, all right, well, time to pay up with your soul. And he's like, but I haven't finished the story. And Martin keeps twisting it,
right?
Where, no matter what happens from here on out, because they finished the TV show before he finished the books, he doesn't actually owe the devil. Even though he's still going to be amazingly rich and making all this stuff. It's a great little video. It's very funny. Well, that's our Game of Thrones episode.
Yes, leave it. Leave a comment if you don't like it.
Please leave a comment. Either way, if you've got something that you either really enjoyed about the show or the books, we won't talk about book 4. It doesn't exist. But if there's something you liked or didn't like that we didn't talk about, or you have any comments, please.
Yeah, bring it up. We'd love to talk with you guys.
Just put them in the comments, man.
Yeah, and as always, as we sign off, raise that glass to inspiration and stay inspired.